Everybody, this is John Bohlinger with Premier Guitar. So this is our third video in the Santa Cruz series that we did. Last year we went out to Santa Cruz, California, and met with Richard Hoover and the good people at Santa Cruz. And in this video, Richard Hoover gets into some real nuance that I think you're going to find really interesting. For one, he gets into binding, which I always thought of as binding as purely an aesthetic thing. It's just how it looks, nothing else. But not with Santa Cruz. They look at every element as making a tonal difference and a difference in the whole part of the guitar. Every part, every ingredient, Richard Hoover doesn't look at it alone, but he looks at it almost as a food pairing, how one element will pair with the other elements. And he's really particular about his binding. He doesn't want synthetics on his guitar. He wants wood. He feels that it's going to sound better. And it's not so much about the binding alone, but how it plays with everything else. It's really interesting. He also gets into the nuance of like headstock size and things like that, which I would, again, I didn't think it was that big of a deal, but for those builders at Santa Cruz, everything is a big deal. So enjoy this video. It's a deep dive, but it's a lot of fun.
So we're talking about how the neck can affect the presence or the projection of the guitar. We also control that greatly with the binding. And I was going to explain, again, coming from the violin tradition where they really think these through. Violin doesn't have any binding.
Right.
Yeah, it does, right? So first the top overhangs the side by a ways. So that little black-white line, black-white black line that goes around that edge is actually right there where the top joins the sides.
Huh.
And it's this. It's called a purple, and it's a laminate black, white, black. But it's not solid wood, and it's certainly not plastic. In the violin tradition, what this is wood that's been ground up and rolled out like a fiber, and it won't conduct resonance.
Huh.
So when you lay this in the little groove around the top of the violin, it decouples the top from the sides, and vibration from the string energy is not going to go from the top into the sides and back and bring sound to the player. Who cares what a violin sounds like behind it? It's this little tiny thing that has to cut through the orchestra and project all the way back to the end of the music hall. That's incredible, right?
I had no idea that the binding has some sonic properties.
Yeah, because they wouldn't tell you.
Well,
The violin makers wouldn't tell you.
And
Yeah.
most of my guitars, it's plastic.
That's right, which is much more efficient. And remember, we're trying to make sure people don't think I dismiss cheaper guitars. They get us into music and playing, and that's a great thing. But our job is to deliver the most sophisticated tool possible. And there's analogies in automobiles, cameras, anything where you want the best to do the best, and that's what we do. So in this regard, plastic's not our friend. It'll conduct resonance quickly, and there's some big brands that want the guitar to sound bigger to the player. I don't mean this as an unkind analogy. I mean it seriously. If you were making hundreds of thousands of guitars a year, who's most important to impress? The audience or the person with a credit card sitting behind the guitar, right?
Yeah.
So pleasing the player is a big thing, and some people will be very happy with that. We want the guitar as it doesn't have to be professional, but the best tool possible. We want to make sure we maximize projection. So we not only use the purple, but this can be configured into herringbone. It can be different colors and different marquetry, but it would serve the same function.
Wow.
Cool?
Yeah, that's fascinating.
The other thing is, they call this the purfling. The binding itself that goes around the outside edge, plastic, that didn't help. It would transfer vibration. Instead, wood is preferable, right? However, the tradition, especially in bluegrass and things like that, is the faux ivory or ivory, right? But isn't that plastic? Not really. It's the first plastic, but it's made from cellulose, cotton fiber dissolved in a solvent, on the way to making gunpowder, by the way. And cellulose is what wood is made out of. So we're really gaming Mother Nature here and doing a faux ivory that acts like wood.
Okay, and the cellulose, kind of like your finishes. The nitro is
That's exactly
wood.
right. Now, did I interrupt you?
No,
Okay.
I was getting carried away thinking about the whole wood thing. And
this is like going on the internet and people will eat you alive. But let me explain this. We do a lot of fussy little things that people go, oh, come on, really? That's going to, well, it's the cumulative nature of all of that that gets our results. And so we build the guitar out of wood, we bind it in wood, we finish it in wood. The pickguard is made out of wood. Again, cellulose that becomes like a plastic, but the compatibility of resonance shows in the end as a result, right?
Wow.
So maybe you could take one away. Who was that? Paul Ehrlich, the vitamin C guy, that said if you looked out the window of your airplane, you see all those rivets, you can take one or two out, right? No problem. 3, 4, 5, 10, right? So at some point you lose, your ability to fly. So this is a very cool thing, and it's pretty arcane knowledge too. And it's more work, but again, worth the result. So ivory can also be tortoiseshell, right? It can be black. The tortoiseshell is made by making a vat of amber celluloid, and then while it's still hot and viscous, they chip in the brown stuff and swirl it around and make and it's made for like eyeglass frames and things like that. It comes in a 400-pound block. So as makers, we cooperate with each other to buy a block and split it up to make it work.
Okay, that was fascinating.
Yeah, it's the binding too is it's a statement, and proportion is critical to get. You can control the look of the scale of elegance and expensive by proportion, and that's the golden mean. The golden mean is a formula to get the dimensions that make it the most pleasing to the eye, right? So how thick you make your binding, the contrast of it, the color to the wood can make a real difference in how elegant and expensive it looks, right?
Oh yeah.
In design, the golden mean is how you make things pleasing and nice for people, makes them comfortable. And we see that in art, realistic art, the old masters, but it's also coming off of the golden mean just enough to make people edgy.
Sure.
And you see that in art too.
Yeah.
So you can do that in the design of a guitar if you want to look modern and evocative. Yeah, go a little half a bubble off plumb, and get that. So that's the idea with this is form, function, acoustic.
There we go.
Isn't that fun? Here we're getting into something that's, I'm going to say, more aesthetic, to keep with the look of elegance without being gaudy. And the binding on the fingerboard is practical because without binding, the end of the fret slot would be exposed to the atmosphere, and it could, with temperature, humidity, degrade the contact or the integrity of the wedging fret and make it come loose. So even when we do an unbound fretboard, the look of an unbound fretboard, we bind it in ebony to cap off those fret slot ends. And it's another thing thinking about durability, restorability, doing the right thing, even though it might not even be noticed. We're putting this ivory again, and in this case, it's just cosmetic. It could be wood, ivory. I mean, it could be plastic, but we want to keep with the aesthetic of natural materials. And it's being put on with cyanoid acrylate, which has acetone in it, and it melts the celluloid binding and really adheres it to that edge.
Okay.
Also, Juan's going to do the binding around the peg head, which again is just a very cool look.
Yeah.
and do the inlays. And here you can see both our initial logo and our script logo that we just talked about in that. We have done some custom inlay on the peg head, but it's a little maladaptive, because first we have to filter people's choices about what's going to go up there, and traditionally that's how people find out what kind of guitar the famous person's playing on TV. So shamelessly, like, have our own design up there.
Sure.
But the weight, the mass of the peg head, remember, is going to add to the mass of the neck, and that's going to control our projection. So we can do, at the lightest, a slotted peg head. At the other one, like a jazz guitar, with that one right in the middle is pretty big peg head, and we do heavier gears on it to get that. And also, usually the wood and the overlay will match the sides and the back, but not always. It's such a small piece that we can take it as an offcut, but sometimes we can use something also really exotic on that. Wood is the best choice. So this is, health and safety is so important to us. This job is using crazy glue, which you use it at home to fix teacup handles and so forth, no big deal, right? But being exposed to it day after day, you can see the precautions Vaughn's taking, not only with a respirator, but we built this device to do a HEPA filter, to filter out stuff through downdrafting this, pulling it below him, and then these capture any stuff that comes up here and runs it through the HEPA filter.
That is, yeah, what a great idea.
Yeah, and it's really nice. We did this, we designed this, we did all in CNC, and if we weren't so busy making guitars, it'd be a great thing to make for other makers.
Oh, absolutely.
You know, just a station, because this kind of downdraft filter commercially is usually pretty big and it's horribly expensive. So as guitar makers, we had to, oftentimes we have to make our own stuff.
Okay, Richard, explain this process.
Simply, we're going to assemble this guitar. We talked about the top thoroughly. The back is a shape and a weight to reflect the sound and also control the tone. So when we talk about that level, that scale of clarity for the top, same with the top, same with the back and sides. Now you don't have to match bright with bright. You can match bright with more warm, and think of this, they don't cancel each other out. It's like having a really tart sauce, and you put pineapple juice in it. You get sweet and sour.
Right.
They don't cancel each other out. You get a whole new thing.
It's a pairing.
So
yeah.
People don't know how to ask for that, but based on their style of playing, we're going to get them on that scale of clarity. And so it's a mix and match of the woods to do it. Everything in here is for purpose. These little braces on the side aren't for strength. We're really heavy on repairability and restorability. People can pay a lot of money for this. You don't want to have it disposable. And what this does, if a crack happens along the grain, you hit it against a corner of a table or something like that, this will stop it. It'll stop the crack from continuing.
Oh.
And if you use nothing, or if you used a little strip of cloth, that crack can compound across the grain, making it really hard to repair and restore. So it doesn't need to be there, but it adds value to the guitar for restorability.
Oh, yeah. Is this a
yeah.
common practice in guitars?
More classical than it is in steel string.
Yeah, because I don't recognize that.
Yeah, like in some guitars, it's a brown cloth, and you don't really see it.
Oh, okay.
It's the glue joint that does that. This block holds the neck joint, and it also holds the sides together, right? So it's a real structural member. It's solid wood for a reason. We're moving vibration through it, or blocking it. This is a really dense laminate. They call it aircraft grade. Back when, before aluminum and carbon fiber, you made things out of wood. And what this is, it's a piece of wood with a grain running like this, one that runs like this, and it makes a sandwich that you can't break, you can't crack. You could crush it maybe, but you can't crack it. And this is because of a strap jack that goes in here, even a strap button that goes in there is tapered. And if you were to drop the guitar on the floor, it could crack this stem to stern. That keeps it from cracking. Also, it's super strong, super light, way stronger than a solid piece of wood on this, right? So the lighter you are, the more resonant you are, but you need structural integrity to hold things together.
Yeah, guitars by nature get banged around a little bit.
Why would you use plywood in such a nice guitar? Well, there's a better word for it. So now we come to these lining. I call them linings because that's the violin tradition. A lot of guitar makers call them kerfing because when you make a saw cut, the negative space is a kerf.
Okay.
You need to know this.
Oh yeah, gotta know that, right?
And in almost all steel string guitars, you look in there and they're brown. How come ours are white? Most makers use a resonant material. Cedar's smells really good, and it conducts resonance really well. Sounds right for a guitar, but think of this. Again, when you drop a pebble in the pool, like plucking the top of the guitar, and that vibration radiates out here, if it contacts a resonant material, it moves through it into the framework of the guitar, and that volume goes to the player at the loss of volume to the audience. The violin is a little tiny, miraculous machine that cuts through the whole orchestra all the way back to the concert hall. How do they do that? One was the purple, and the other one is this stuff. It's a basswood. That's called linden in Europe, and this is a scrap. The if it breaks, feel that super soft. If you made a bell out of that, you couldn't hear it.
Right.
It decouples or isolates the top from the sides. So now we look at this. You drop the pebble in the pool, it comes to this. It can't go any farther. This doesn't absorb it. It just won't allow it. The only place it can go is back to the top and pump multiples of air out the sound hole to the audience. Right? So by the density of this wood, I should say the resonance of the wood, you can control more the presence of the guitar. So we truly can make a guitar sound wherever we wanted it to. Right? We choose to not ask people what they want as much as figure out what they want, right, to do that.
Yeah, because you don't really, it's hard to even know what you want.
You don't, but you do have a thing that you would like the most. Yeah. And it's not like a magical divination to figure that. It's like what people play, what they're doing with a guitar. And, you know, all these things are not so specific. They're not going to enjoy playing in any context. It's just going to make it the best for what they do. So that's a neat trick. And that's another thing we owe the violin trade for. Now, when we assemble this, remember I was debunking the myth about what makes old instruments sound good. And we talked about the first one, is the polymerization of resins making the sticky stuff get hard and more resonant. You could dry a piece of wood bone dry, but it doesn't make that stuff harder. It just makes it more sticky.
That only happens with age? Is that?
Yeah, it only happens with age, as far as we know. It's not oxygen because it'll happen underwater, but it could happen on a shelf in an old shop waiting to be used. It could be in a canoe, or it could be in a violin or guitar. It's going to get better and more resonant as time goes by. But it's not the only thing that'll do it. The next most important thing is tension. When you bend sides, assemble this, the faster you go to save money, the more tension you'll build into it. And the analogy is like, having a belt around your stomach if you're singing opera. Right? Yeah. You're not going to do your best. But if it's relaxed, it'll be more resonant. So in a guitar, as an assembly, over the years, it'll relax more and more, and it becomes more and more resonant, right? So the idea is to build this with as least tension as possible. And the sides, for instance, are bent to shape, and if you want to go quick, you could put them in the mold and assemble it while they're still a little warm and moist. However, that's a lot of tension. if you temper this correctly when you bend, it won't want to spring back and you won't have that tension. Sometimes I feel like people go, what? Really? Yeah, really. So old wood, lack of tension, we got a big part of what makes an older guitar sound the way it does.
Huh.
The last one is what most people think of. The French school of violin making referred to as de-damping. If you ring a bell and put your finger on it, you damp it. If you take it off, it de-damps it. And that would be what happens to the wood as it vibrates and becomes more elastic and more resonant. And it doesn't happen just from any vibration. You know, there's some folklore about, oh, put your guitar in front of speakers when you're working, do it. Or these old guitars were really good sounding because they were played a lot. Here's the irony, is it's only when it hits the frequency that would resonate the airspace or the top does that begin to happen. And that's a lot of playing, you know?
Yeah.
Otherwise, like shooting a shotgun at a BB. The only way to de-damp that way is when this vibrates at the frequency, its natural frequency, and that will happen. And you could accelerate that, but it's pretty dangerous. You know, you'd have to get this. In fact, a good friend Roger Siminoff had a demonstration. He put a little vibrating motor. Vibrating motor is just anything where you put a weight off center, go wog, 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 and a little toy train transformer. So the faster it goes, it's like higher frequency. You got some frequency control. You cable tie that to the bridge, and you turn it till this thing just howls. It can't hum. It's got a, and you could leave that overnight. And the tighter the guitar was built, the more you would notice a difference. Ours is built with those two first things, which are such an advantage. We leave the damping to the customer.
Yeah.
You know, it's a much less of a thing. So there's what makes an old guitar sound better, and we do them all to start with. You know, old wood, low tension, and the de-damping, as I said, we leave up to you. So that's what this assembly about. However, to be fair, it's not all absence of tension. There's some tension built into this to make the top work as well as possible. A flat top won't resonate nearly as well as a top that has a radius and some tension in it. So that's another violin thing. That is worth the effort. You know, if you're looking for the absolute epitome of response out of this.
Sure.
It takes a lot of fussy handwork to get there.
Yeah.
This will be glued together. I should have said this earlier. Remember, we talked about the scale of clarity and the choice of woods. You can do that with glue too. When we glue something together with the aliphatic resin, the Titebond, vibration moves through it slower and less immediate and with a warmer tone. If we glue it together with old-fashioned high glue, it dries like glass, and it goes through a lickety-split, and it's bright and clear.
Wow.
So the glue we use on these braces, and also whether we use a bright brace stock or a warm brace stock. Whew. So we come to here. If we glue this together with high glue, we're going backwards. We're making this more resonant rather than decoupling. So we do it with Titebond, which is not as resonant.
Wow.
No.
That's amazing.
Aren't you glad you asked?
Yeah. Well, it is kind of incredible that somebody could, with the best of intentions, say, "Oh, all hide glue," and make a
people
mistake.
do. And a lot of it comes, of course, from people's experience with an old guitar. That sounds great. Let's put hide glue on it. Well, hide glue did something, but that's not. It's a combination of things that made it sound better. But Titebond will, allow more vibration. You'll get more volume behind the guitar than you get in front of it. Isn't that crazy?
Yeah, it is.
So
It is.
we're doing that with a lot of nuance, a lot of little things that add up to get our result.
Yeah. Where are we now?
I dismiss it. I call this a dust and noise room, but it's important, dust and noise making. And actually, the reason it's quiet now is this is a hum in the morning. We're making parts and pieces, And even though we're custom, there are some things that are standardized. We're going to carve and tune the braces, but we've got to start out with a little stick, and we need multiples of that. We also do the sanding, the dust making in here. And you remember we talked about that secondary tuning of the body.
Yes.
We tune the top, we put it together, we got to do it, tune it to the airspace. That's done in here because it's dusty and noisy. And you'd think somebody had to listen really carefully. No, you can feel it. You can
Really?
feel it. And like I said, you can feel the air blowing on your face. You can also feel the thing come alive and hum. And it's really very cool, exciting thing to do. So you know you're not going to go too far. When you get it, you get it. There's no reason to go further. So this requires crazy safety. People come in this room, they're wearing ear, respiratory, eye protection, and working with machines. We try to make it as safe as possible, but still, and things can happen. And you know, thank God we've had 100% success. Nobody's ever lost a digit.
Oh man.
Most of our serious injuries come from like a cut with a chisel or doing something, and it's universal. People go, I knew I shouldn't have been doing that. Right. How many times, like, right before you go, I shouldn't be, oh shoot.
Yeah. Listen to that little voice.
Yeah, oh man, absolutely. So, you know, it's a critical thing. We're not about to save money on that. And it pays off, you know, peace of mind, people's engagement and all that. So most of these tools are conventional that you see here, you know, saw, sand, but they've all been taken apart and hot rodded for really fine tolerances. Our wide belt sander is a sanding belt on a conveyor. A sanding belt on a roll, and a conveyor that pulls the piece through at a steady rate, and you can raise and lower it, right, to get it. We had to set it up so we can tilt it a little to taper our tops, remember, to make a bass and treble side for EQ control. And we bought this one used, and I went to check it out, and I took a top with me. We ran it through the sander, and the salesman says, you know, it's only 10 thousandths difference from side to side. He says, how's that for accuracy? And I said, it won't do, but we can fix it. Because we really, again, we're tuning that top, but it's being sanded to thickness in here, and you can feel what we're looking for. And that's really small increments to do. So this is a good illustration. Nobody works in here all day long. People working in the morning, they'll come in and out during the day when they have to do something noisy, dusty, or sand, but nobody works in here all day long. And the idea behind that is people need some variety to be engaged. I want people to feel like they're making guitars, not just making holes or one thing or another, which is the key to manufacturing efficiency, by the way. You know, you're the professional hole driller. You stay there, you get good at it, and you're efficient. It really has to do with our quality level. Our quality was excruciatingly high, and you can't get it through traditional methods. You know, if you're running a factory, you get quality by either rewarding somebody for doing an adequate job, or you threaten them if they don't, right?
Yeah.
And none of those motivate anybody to do their best. They'll do what's necessary to get by and go home and do what's really interesting. So we need people that are truly engaged in what we make, why we make it, and the final product. And with that, they'll set their own standards of excellence with it. And that's why we want somebody to be involved in making a guitar that's going to go out and change the world, not 6 holes in it. And I got an invitation to go to Bulgaria to a factory because they visited us and they were done, and that beautiful guy, a good friend, he goes, how come your people are so happy? Because it wasn't the case in Bulgaria. And that was the thing I showed him. Some people there didn't even really understand what they're making. right? So it's just another job, and they felt responsible. They do it to standards, but they weren't going to break a sweat to really do excellent stuff. So this can be fun. When I've got a particularly gnarly HR problem, or no matter how right you do things, stuff comes up. Right?
Sure.
And it can really knot you up. And I like to come in here and set up and do multiples of something as a kind of a meditation and relax. So it's a good break from something where you really have to be precise or really think things through. And I like people getting a little bit of each with it. So what this room is, it's like set up for safety, efficiency, and people come in again with respiratory, eye, and ear protection. And they don't have to hang in here all day.
Yeah.
So I love it. I come from the background. My father had a home shop. You know, the smells, everything is just cool as can be.
Yeah, it does smell really good. In
We
there.
we have a problem. We live in one of the most desirable places in the world. You know, the natural beauty is unparalleled. There's a marine sanctuary just a few miles away. 6 miles up the road, we're in virgin native redwoods. It's cool. And everybody wants to live here, and it's real expensive. So when it comes to storing wood, big machinery, we've developed a off-site source, work in cooperation with another person, where we have some heavier machinery, because we can buy a tree and disassemble it and turn it into a guitar. And that
Really?
takes them, yeah.
You buy
We
whole
do.
trees.
Yeah,
wow.
we do. I love this. It was a snag, which is they call a dead tree, up in British Columbia, and it was up on the ridge, and it was kind of a local landmark, right? People like a silver ghost, and it fell over in a storm, and we got it, but we had to take the whole thing, right, and work from there. And those are just a real joy with it. So this little shed behind you here, when you build a guitar, you don't want to dry it conventionally in a kiln where it heats it up and boils out the moisture, because it'll disrupt the cellular structure and disrupt the vibrational transfer. You want to air dry it where it's in a natural state, and the changes in weather create atmosphere. The atmosphere outside has less pressure than the pressure inside the wood, draws the moisture out, and most importantly, becomes stable. It won't move up and down quickly. That takes a really long time. So we came up with this thing. We make our own weather in there. We can dehumidify, humidify, move air, and heat. So we have sun, wind, and rain.
Wow.
And we can run cycles, repeated cycles. We go through years of air drying in a matter of weeks. So the wood goes in, we test it daily, figure out how to move each of these elements, and when we're done, life is good.
Wow.
So that was great. Since then, a guy we know that's a NASA scientist developed this crazy thing that does it through vacuum, right? And it looks like it's crazy looking, like some outer space. It's a big tank with a million valves and all that, way out of our league. But we partnered with a guy that does a wood business, selling guitar wood. And so we vacuum kiln our stuff there. We can cut the big stuff, and life is good. We don't have to pay rent,
Right.
on that. So our business truly is, there's a lot of cooperations like that where we get able to do things we couldn't do alone, and we couldn't afford, but we can do things that are simpatico and pull it off. The offcuts from the wood, which there's plenty. We take a guitar top, we cut out the guitar shape. What do you do with the rest? It's precious stuff, as you learned here. And we don't want that. We want to use everything but the dust. And those go to a couple really wonderful things. One is Ventana surfboards, where he uses the laminates of that stuff for laminates, and the artistic surfboards are beautiful. He also, a large time that does this, made a beautiful boat of the scrap materials. And he also got a hold of John Steinbeck's wood from the restoration of John Steinbeck's Western Flyer, which we have a little of too, which is redwood. We have a guy, Peter Thomas, that does these crazy, beautiful books that he binds, like, let's say, a poem. Each page would be suspended in a box and beautiful brass hinges, and the stuff's made out of our woods. Also, he does these little tiny books that fold out that are remarkable, and use those offcuts. We could actually use more sources, so I hope people are hearing this. Somebody go, hey, can we get some of your stuff? I used to try to take it home and use it as kindling, but my wife wouldn't let me put it in the fireplace. So.
Right. Yeah, how great that it's...
Yeah. Oh, it's great. And again, the nature of these relationships, a lot of gratification in that, being part of those creative processes. I love it. I think Mark Tyne, what's his video that we really liked?
Oh, Shape of Hope.
Shape of Hope. Yeah, it's worth looking at.
Okay, Shape of Hope.
Mm-hmm. So, wood. I don't want to go back into wood, but this is a place where we start out. Like I said, we can take a tree, disassemble it, turn it into a guitar, and luckily we're using old wood rather than a new cut green tree, which is really difficult to dry.
Oh, sure.
Yeah. So loving that.